Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Above Board podcast. Today's guest speaks to the quiet tension that I think many high-performing men carry, which is success on paper, but misalignment at home or internally. Mitchell Osmond is the founder of Dad Nation and the host of the Dad Nation podcast, which is a show that ranks in the top 5% of podcasts globally, and he's become the go-to resource for men who want to lead better lives. Before building Dad Nation, Mitchell spent over 15 years in executive leadership roles, and today he works with high-achieving men who are tired of winning everywhere except where it matters the most. His work focuses on identity, emotional ownership, intentional leadership, and creating alignment between our career success and our family life. What I think I appreciate the most about his approach is that it's practical. And very much of it is informed through his own real life experiences and transformation as well. None of this fluffy stuff, as the rich bee on our show would say. So no pretending, just honest conversations about responsibility, growth, and more fulfillment. I'm excited for this one. Mitchell, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me here, John. I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you, brother.
It's going to be a blast. So I want to open up with, what I talked about in the introduction, obviously. And I think, maybe either looking back on your own journey or the men that you work with now, what do you feel like is perhaps one of the early warning signs or signals that's kind of telling someone like, hey, success and alignment are starting to drift apart, and how we're operating really well at work, but maybe some of the other areas in our life are falling by the wayside?
Yeah, and I would say a big indicator is your internal tension, right? And so, and what I mean, let me unpack this for you, because we all wrestle with that tension of maybe the outside looks a certain way, but we know deep down on the inside looks differently. There's an incongruency between who we say we are and who we actually are, or who we are in business and who we are at home. And there's that tension that, like, the thing is you can't lie to yourself in the depths of your heart. You have to be honest with yourself, and because you have to face the reality of your life. And so men fall into that struggle because they'll find success at work, and also it makes sense at work. The metrics make sense at work. It's very clear. The lines are very clear. You get performance bonuses, you get attaboys, you close more contracts. It's like very easy to track KPIs. Like, well, I can tell that I'm a successful, business person. I'm good at this. When you come home, however, you can't KPI your marriage, right? I always make jokes to say your 6-year-old is never going to come up to you and say to you when you get home from work, hey, Daddy, here are 10 strategic reasons why you're an effective father with a spreadsheet. It's just not going to happen, right? And so the lines are so blurry. How do you even know if you're making progress in your emotional intelligence, or if you're progress in your marriage? And also the things that really drive us as men, and again, because I work exclusively with men, a lot of my language will be masculine, but through that, we're driven by success. We're driven by excellence. We're driven by goals and solutions and strategies. But when we come home, that is not what our family needs. That is not what our wife needs. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I heard my wife say, stop trying to fix it, right? Yeah. And so what happens is men, they get paid, and they get paid well, 8, 10, 12 hours a day to create solutions, to create strategies. And they come home and their wife starts talking about maybe they had a hard day with the kids, or maybe she got in a fight with her sister, or whatever, something, and then you start shoving a strategy down her throat, and she's like, I don't need that, right? And so what happens? Here's the thing, and I'll drop this right off the get-go. A woman's 3 core needs are to feel seen, and to feel heard, and to feel safe. Notice I didn't say to feel solved, right, or feel strategized. A man's 2 core needs are to feel respected and to feel competent. You want to break a man, disrespect him, and make him feel purposeless, or he's incompetent in the home. So, but here's what happens, and this is what we call the crazy cycle. And if you're listening, I want you to put yourself in this situation and let me know if you've ever been there. You come home from work or some scenario like that, and you're in this situation where maybe your wife starts just opening up emotionally about what's going on. Maybe she's going through, some postpartum stuff. Could be anything. And all of a sudden, you put on your fixer hat, right? And you start strategizing. And what happens is we treat our partners, or we treat our wives like colleagues or staff members or employees. And you say, okay, well, here's a good idea. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? Or maybe even better yet, you're worrying too much about this. This doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. Get over it, right? What happens is we're belittling them, their emotions. If her need is to feel seen, heard, and safe, she does not feel seen, she does not feel heard, and she does not feel emotionally safe. So what's the byproduct of that? She begins to respond in a way that makes you feel like you're incompetent. Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep trying to fix everything? I just want you to listen. You go to work all day, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden you feel maybe disrespected, or you start to feel incompetent. Then what happens? You are less likely to make her feel seen, heard, and safe, and to love her, cherish her, which means she's then less likely to make you feel respected or competent. And so this is what we call the crazy cycle. And then we drift, because what do? Then the partner, the wife, the spouse, she leans into the other areas to get those needs for affection and attention met. The kids, right? And then the husband, where does he get his needs met? Where does he feel competent? Where does he feel respected? At work, right? And so we start to lean outward and turn away from each other and get our needs met elsewhere. It doesn't mean you're going to have an affair. It just means you're getting those core needs met somewhere else. And so we drift. And this is what happens. And eventually we become roommates sharing rings, right? And that is the spiral. And so if that sounds familiar as I'm speaking that to you, or when you come home and it feels like you guys are just sharing a mortgage, perhaps this is what has happened. And it's a great time to have that conversation of, hey, honey, what does it look like to make you feel more seen? At home, in your work, or what does it look like to make you feel more heard? What does it look like to make you feel more safe? And you can have that conversation with her about the respect and the competency. And here's the thing, John, I've done this. You ask a room of a couple hundred men, would you rather hear the words from your wife? Would you rather hear the words, I love you, or I respect you? 99% of the room are going to put up their hand when they hear the word, I respect you. I tell you, there is nothing more. If you're listening and you're a woman and you're married to a man, let me tell you, there's nothing more encouraging than you can do than to say, I believe in you. You can do anything. You're such a great father. That means way more than I love you. Why is that? Because it meets our desire to feel competent, right? So those are, I'm rambling, but those are a couple of things that are, in my opinion, kind of no-brainers, but they're not really. A lot of people intuitively might know that, but they don't necessarily live, and they're not intentional in those areas. Does that make sense?
I joke a lot of times on this podcast that some of the things we say and talk about are no-brainer things, but I also feel like a lot of times you need to hear it. You need to hear it a different way, or it needs to receive you at the right time. And so, no, it makes perfect sense. And in fact, as you were sharing some of this, I was thinking about a conversation Jackie and I had yesterday where it is just funny as guys, my innate response to go into problem-solving mode can that hardwiring to be that way can just override even I know a lot of what you said. It's I know I know this about my relationship. Sometimes I just need to listen and not problem solve. And we're standing there in the hallway and we're having this conversation about, and all of a sudden I'm finding myself giving her this advice on how to structure and organize her day. and I'm hearing it and I'm like, what am I doing? What am I saying this for? Why? And I could just see her be like, what are you talking about too? And it was in the spirit of just some work stuff. And so I was like, oh, I have some good thoughts on this. Here's my thoughts on this. And she's like, that's not what we're not there. We're not having that conversation. We're in the listening part of the discussion. And I would also say, so for me, kind of back to that first question I asked you, early warning signs, I noticed for myself, especially with a young family. So, my kids are 6 and 9 now. So kind of living through the baby stages, the toddler stages, just the stages that are pure exhaustion as a parent, where you got 2 kids that are both waking up at night and you're like, when is this ever going to end? And then magically it does. They do sleep through the night and you're like, wow, this is great. I missed those stages. I missed that time. Anyway, I'm rambling, but I noticed at different points for me, it was not showing up as the problem solver, but it was like my mind was so set on work and growth and what I was building that, my wife would tell me like, hey, you're here, but you're not here. Like you're physically here. Because I would always pat myself on the back too. I'd be like, hey, I'm going to take that day off. The kids have a field trip. I'm going to that, or I'm going to be available. And that meant a lot to me to be physically present. But then what I realized was I wasn't mentally or emotionally there all the time either. And I don't know if you work with men that face that issue as well. Certainly, it seems like a common problem where it's like it wasn't even so much an energy issue for me where I'm just too tired at the end of the day. It's like my brain is still like the wheels are still turning. And I had for me, number one, my wife needed to kind of call me out on it for me to recognize it and be like, okay, I need to. And it's an ever, it's an ever present like thing that I have to work on. But like how I disconnect, because I work from home a lot of days, so it's like, all right, I gotta have my routine and like walk around the block before I like mentally check in at home at night and stuff like that. But do you experience talking with men that have those issues too, where it's just like hard to be emotionally and mentally present in their household? Loaded question.
I'm chuckling because I would say yes, a million times. Yes, man. That's like 99% of the men that I work with. They hear things like, I feel like I married a robot, or like you're here and your physical body may be here, but your mind ain't here, right? Your emotions aren't here with me. So, I want to get into that because I want to give guys a practical tool, because this is what I deal with all the time. And I help men be where their feet are. Because here's the thing. We fall into the trap of going to work, and we're at work and we're thinking about our kids. We're thinking about our family. But then when we come home, we're thinking about, with our kids and our family, we're thinking about work. And it's like we're never truly where we are, right? And so one of the most profound things that I ever heard was be where your feet are. Wherever you are, be there. If your feet are in the nursery, be there. If your knees are in the, on the floor playing with your kids, be there. If your feet are sitting at the kitchen table, be there. Don't be on your cell phone. If you're standing in the boardroom, be there, right? So anyways, just going back to what you were saying about fixing, I want to share an analogy because I feel like almost every man listening is going to feel pretty seen when I say this, but you're right. It's this innate wiring. And I explain it like this. Like when you're sitting with your wife and she's talking about something that's bothering her, and you may not even really get it, right? Like you might be like, what's the big deal? It doesn't, I was dealing with this, 7-figure contract that we almost lost today. And now I'm coming home and you had an argument with your sister-in-law. Like, why does that matter? You don't necessarily need to feel that same way with her, but you do need to listen and empathize. And so just saying things like that's tough. That sucks.
Yeah.
The thing that I'll often say is like, you know what, if I were you, I would feel the exact same way. And it's true. If you were her, you would feel that way, right?
Sure.
And so notice I didn't say, here's what you can do about it, right? Here's how you can have that. Here's how you can structure that conversation toward reconciliation. And that's the thing. My wife used to call me the gratitude police because she'd get upset about something and she'd be like, oh, here comes the gratitude police telling me why I got to feel better, right? and
that just makes people feel worse.
Exactly.
It's like, thanks for telling me that and that I should be grateful. Now I just feel even angrier.
Yeah, exactly. But here's what it feels like, man. It's like you're standing in front of your house and it's on fire and you've got a hose and you can and it's fully pressurized and you can turn it on and you're standing there with your wife and you're like, I can turn it on. I can put the fire out. Just let me know when. She's like, no, just keep it off. We're just going to watch it burn. That's literally how it feels sometimes in your mind when you're like, don't fix it. Don't fix it. Don't fix it. Just listen. Right. And so I just say that to affirm you, man, that and anyone else listening, it's normal to feel that tension and to have to manually override that. That's just a part of the male expression, especially if you're a highly masculine man, because that testosterone kind of drives that fixer in you. Anyways, just wanted to say that. I'll get to what you were saying about not being present in the room. And so if we have more time, I'd really break down that Because that need to feel seen, heard, safe, I call that the attraction triangle. And the idea is that if you can meet those three needs, you can go from feeling incompatible to irresistible in your relationship. But if we were to talk about the heard piece, because a lot of times when women say, I feel like you're not here or you're not with me, what they're saying is you don't hear me, right? Like I'm talking to you, but it's like bouncing off a wall. And so if you think about it this way, there's really three steps, and it's very similar to active listening if you've ever read about that. But there's three steps. There's mirroring, and then there's summarizing, and then clarifying, right? Mirroring, summarizing, clarifying. So the first thing, for example, if she says, like I feel like I'm just so overwhelmed with all the stuff going on in the house, and I feel like I'm alone in it, right? So immediately, we don't go into defense. We're not like, well, I was working too all day, and I did this, and blah, 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 right? Because when we are elevated like that emotionally, blood flow to the prefrontal cortex actually stops. Now, the key thing about the prefrontal cortex is that part of the brain is responsible for logic, for empathy, for reasoning. So I want you guys to understand as you're listening, if blood flow stops to that part of the brain when you get elevated emotionally, you lose the capacity to be empathetic and put yourself in your wife's position. You lose the ability to be logical and rational. And so neurologists have done brain scans on brains in situations where the subject was highly in an elevated state, like very angry or very anxious, and then compared them back to back with the brain scan of a person who was in the middle of a manic episode. And the brain scans were almost identical. Meaning, when you were in that elevated state, your brain is actually functioning very similarly to someone who is literally losing their mind, right? So it's really important for us to understand this. And so what you want to do, and I'll give you a tip on how to keep your cool, but what you want to do in the moment.
I need them. I need all the tips.
What you want to do in the moment when she starts saying something like that, where she's verbally expressing herself about, I feel like I'm alone in this, keeping up with stuff around the house. Mirroring, yeah, babe, I hear you. Like, I think what you're saying is that you feel like you're doing this all by yourself, right? So you're using language back at her subconsciously. That sends a message that says, as using her language, which tells her, oh, he's here, and he hears my words. Then there's the summary. So you're summarizing, and then so you might say something like, and it feels like you're alone in all this, like you're carrying all this weight. And it feels like I'm not around to support you, or you feel like you're unsupported, right? You are summarizing what you said. And in the back of her mind, she's like, yes. And then comes the clarify piece of this. Did I get that right? Right? What I hear you saying, babe, is that like you're really having a hard time. Like you feel like you're unsupported and that you're alone in this, right? Did I get that right? That sequence is going to make her feel so heard, right? Notice I didn't say, well, here's what you can do about it. Or I didn't get defensive. I didn't get elevated, right? So that part, mirror, summarize, clarify is key in helping her feel heard. And that's important because a woman's need to express herself emotionally is greater than you can even imagine, right? Yeah. And so when we shut them down or belittle them, that is like literally poison to her soul. Okay, so on this topic of presence, you were saying, like she said, I feel like you're here, you're not really here. What I teach guys to do is just a quick preparation pause. It's like you want to pause for 5 minutes and prepare for this next moment you're going to step into. So I know I'm throwing a lot at you guys, so you might want to pause this or go back and make notes. But if when you come home from work or come home from wherever you were, where you're mentally preoccupied, take 5 minutes, okay? And I want you to close all open loops, wrap up any emails, send any text messages, make the phone call, wrap it up. And we know this to be true because it's something called the Zeigarnik effect, where like if we have open loops of things that we haven't resolved, then they will stay open and they will use mental real estate, and it will cause us to be distracted. So what we do in the moment is we pause, we wrap up all those communications, and we do a couple breathing exercises. Just and the one that I love is 4-7-8. Navy SEALs use this. It's 4-7-8. You inhale for 4, hold it for 7, and then you exhale for 8. You do that 3 times. And then ask yourself this question before you walk through the door. What does it look like for me to show up powerfully for my family in the next, 2 hours or whatever? The reason why is because subconsciously when you ask yourself that question, you also have to answer it. What does it look like for me to show up powerfully? And here's the thing. You intuitively know the answer. Like you said, some of these things are no-brainers. But if you ask yourself and you force yourself to answer, well, then you're going to say, you can't in good conscience say, well, it would look like me staying on my phone and walking past my wife and going up to grab a shower. If you genuinely ask yourself that question, what does it look like for me to show up as a loving, present father when I walk through the door? You're going to know, because the answer is going to be, you're going to put your phone down, you're going to get on the floor, you're going to play with your kids. Or what does it look like for me to show up as, powerfully as a husband? Well, if you ask yourself that, you're going to know, I'm going to walk in, I'm going to make eye contact with her, I'm going to hug her, I'm going to kiss her, and tell her I missed her, right? Yeah. And so when you ask yourself that, you can answer. But there's something called the Solomon's Paradox, which is why we don't do the things we want to do, and we end up doing the things we don't want to do. We're terrible at taking our own advice. And so I've had clients even just put like a sticky note on their dashboard, pause, 478, or write the question out and stick it there. So every time they park the car, they're like, okay, right? Does that make sense? And that way, when you show, there you go.
I'm holding up. So for those that are watching on YouTube, I'm holding mine up, which is hilarious that you just said that, Mitchell. But mine is stop, breathe, and be. That's what I have. What I have written down. And honestly, and I didn't mean to interrupt your train of thought, but I feel so compelled to agree with you. I mean, I think that the level of intentionality that you help coach people on is really important, because for me, some of this is like I've just sort of stumbled my way into this. Like I realized since COVID, when I started working from home a lot instead of being in the office, that I didn't have my drive home to sort of disconnect from work, have that mental reset, and then come in the door ready to go. And so I was like, I got to do something about that. And my new thing, and it's changed over the years, the new one that it's evolved to is I go outside, I do one walk around the loop in my neighborhood, usually have my daughter come out, we'll play catch for like 5 or 10 minutes, talk about the day, and then I can enter the household, the version of myself that I need to be. And we had another famous Mitch on the pod. He goes by Mitch, not Mitchell, but we had another famous Mitch on the podcast last year, and his name's Mitch Matthews. And his big thing was, my big takeaway from that our conversation was, be one place well. Or in what you're saying, it's be where your feet are. We're saying the same things, but for me, I tell myself that. I'm like, okay, be one place well. And I don't quite have the same intentionality, which I'm going to adopt now, just hearing you say some of this stuff. Like, what would it look like for me to show up tonight? But I think that that's so important, because if you face yourself with that question and then you have to answer that question, and you know subconsciously without even thinking about it, you're like, the best version of me isn't me scrolling on my phone on Instagram all night and ignoring my family and having a shower and doing whatever I want to do. That's not the best version of me. But I think if you kind of like just even that nudge of asking yourself the question just really makes it like present in your mind. And I love that. I mean, and a lot of what I've learned over the years is just through trial and error, like in my own relationship of like, oh, okay, like, don't say that. Don't be the problem solver here. And these aren't tactics that Mitchell's talking about. These are ideas for present husbands and fathers that want to be there for their family and think through this stuff. I have a fun story. Can I share it with you?
Yeah, dude, love to hear it.
So last year and in previous years, I do goal planning every year, and I've shared this on the podcast recently, but like my wife and I kind of like did it independently, not on purpose, just like she had a busy career, so did I, and so we'd kind of write our goals down and then come together and talk about like, hey, what do we want the year to look like? And the year that like got me real bad was I had like 7 goals for the year, and we're kind of going through them, and she's like, this is great. Where's anything that has to do with the family or me or the kids? And I was like, oh my God. Like I didn't even realize it. I went so, and I am like the proverbial, person that you're talking to, your audience, right? Because I'm like, everything's KPIs, action-oriented work and growth. And we're building the team at this time. Like, we're growing, and it's just all that's like on my prefrontal cortex. It's like all that's on my brain. And my wife's like, what? Where is everybody else? And even like personal goals. I'm like, I'm going to complete 75 hard this year. Do you know what that is?
Oh,
75
yeah.
hard. I'm going to complete 75 hard this year. I'm going to do all these things. And she's just like almost disappointment. It wasn't even like we got in an argument about it. She was just like, okay, like kind of like what is this? And I thought, wow, what an eye-opening. And again, it's basic. Like, if you looked at that objectively, like if you showed that to 100 people, they'd be like, John, like, don't bring this to your household. They're going to be like, where is all of the other like balanced life goals about relationships and personal and family and all this stuff? And it's such a stupid thing. And so this year we did this. Have you heard of, I've never cursed on this show, but this is the name of it. It's called the Big Ass Calendar. Have you heard of this?
Yes,
it's like,
I have. Yeah.
it's this really, I don't know. It's, started getting like targeted ads for it. And I was like, let's give it a shot. And I gotta tell you, man, yesterday, like Jackie and I sat for like 3 hours yesterday and went through goal planning together. And they give you these ideas of like mini adventures to go on as a family or independently or whatever. And they're just, I found myself for the first time in years, probably maybe ever, creating goals around stuff that had nothing to do with work. And it was more just like, family and whatnot. And so I share this story because like, I know that what you're saying, a lot of people can identify with, but I wanted to kind of be a little vulnerable and share this, like, man, I'm such an idiot. And I'm like, check out all these amazing goals last year, Jackie. And she's like, where is anything to do with the family and the kids on here? And I'm like, wow, swing and a miss, right? Like just, and I felt terrible about that. And she wasn't even trying to make me feel bad, but it was like, what an eye opener. I need to fix this. And I think, for whatever, men that are listening to this that have that eye opening moment, whatever that is, then acting on it and then taking some of this advice that you're giving today to go like, all right, how am I going to be present? How am I going to be where my feet are? How am I going to reset myself so I go into the household, after work, present and ready to be there? And, you were talking about like husband and wife conversations, but frankly, I think it's just as hard for dads to have conversations with their kids and not accidentally belittle their situations, Like, yeah. My 9-year-old comes home and tells me about her day and these bad things that happened. And, of course, sometimes that internal dialogue is like, oh, kid, if only you knew, like, these things that have happened in my day. But you don't say that to your kids, right? Same as you wouldn't say that to a family member or your spouse. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the beauty of all this, man, is these same principles apply to your children as well. Because whether they're kids or your wife, they know if you're not there. They know if you're not checked in. They know, all those different things, right? So it's huge. Yeah, and I would say, man, just to, affirm, where you're at and that story, that's a very natural thing, right? And that's because, the masculine essence is driven, like I said, by performance, by being on mission, by excellence, where the feminine is driven by nurturing, by emotions, all those different things. And so it is a bit of a stereotype, but it does paint a great picture. Let me share it with you. And when I talk about the feminine versus the masculine, because it is important for us to understand our wiring. Now, I'm not saying men and women, because there are some highly feminine men and there's some really masculine women. And that's a great thing, like whatever. But what I'm talking about is that the essence of, when men are masculine and women are feminine. But when you look at, say, for example, a Super Bowl party, right? If you were to go walk into a big Super Bowl party, where would you see 95% of the men?
Oh, surrounded by the TV, watching the game.
Watching the game. Watching some of the best athletes in the world do what they do. They're on a strong mission. They're some of the best in the world. They have incredible careers. They're inspiring. We're drawn to excellence, like moths to a flame. Mm-hmm. Now, where do you see 95% of the women at a Super Bowl party?
Yeah, they're probably hanging around, chatting with each other, maybe in the kitchen, maybe in like the living room, but wherever they are is potentially not by the TV.
Exactly. Nowhere to be found around the game, but they're maybe sitting around the island, sipping a glass of wine, catching up. Hey, Jackie, how are the kids? How's John doing? How was that thing? They're nurturing one another. They're fostering relationships. They're connecting on an emotional level. Now, it is a stereotype, or it is a generalization, but for the vast majority of us, that is just the way it is. And so when you create goals and plan, I've done the exact same thing, man, and with like the whole goals thing. And so we started creating shared goals. What does it look like for us as a couple? What are our shared goals as a husband and wife for our family? And that makes her feel included in my drive and my ambition, right? And so I just say all that to say it's important to understand that it's natural to feel that way, and that's actually part of your DNA. It's part of your wiring, and it's part of what makes you so well equipped to work together, right? Because where the feminine needs support, the masculine steps in. Where the masculine needs support, like often in emotional intelligence in those areas to connect with the kids, then the feminine steps in, right? And this is important, right? I want to share a couple statistics with you, not to be like super weighty, but to help you understand the importance of this. We know that today in the U.S., up to 70% of divorces are initiated by the women in the relationship. Okay, 7 out of 10. Now, in situations, if you dig into that data even more, situations where the wife has a high education or is a high earner, that number jumps to 90%. 9 out of every 10 divorces are initiated by women. Now, what's even crazier is 80% of the time, the main reason cited for that divorce initiation is not cheating, it's not abuse, it's not sex, money, kids, all the things that people say it is. You know what it is? It's emotional disconnection. I didn't feel like a priority. He didn't listen. I didn't feel connected with him emotionally. And so if we understand that up to 90% of divorces are initiated by women, and 80% of that time it's because of an emotional disconnection, so much of the work that I do with men is teaching them how to understand their emotions, how to communicate their emotions, and to also sit with their wife and hold space for her emotions so that she can feel seen, heard, and safe. And when you can do that, man, your wife will be a completely different woman. Your marriage will be turned upside down. It's absolutely incredible. And so I can't advocate for that more. But here's the crazy thing is, like I said, it's part of the male expression. There's a term called normative male alexithymia, which is a bit of a mouthful. But if you break down alexithymia from the Greek, it's like alexis thymos, which means to be without words, lexis for emotion, thymos. And so if you put all that together, it's normal for a male to be without words for emotion, right? So this is a part of the male expression. But I want you to hear me say this. Your wiring may explain you, but it does not excuse you. All right? And I say that in love. It's important for us to understand these skills and to develop our skills in emotional awareness and intelligence, because this is not 1945. All right?
Yeah.
Roles have changed. Society has changed. And we all have needs, and those are changing too. And so that's what I spend a lot of my time, man, is calling men up and educating them on how to connect with their partners on that level. And then watch what happens. Watch her start to shower you with respect and competence and all those different things. It's crazy, man. Your marriage will do a 180.
What a great mission for you to serve families. Like, it's interesting because I know, like typically you work with men. I mean, that's your predominant, folks that you serve. But yet I think like the wives, the women listening to this podcast, that's what I kind of love about this conversation is it doesn't, and I hope for the folks that are 35 minutes in with us that are female didn't, you made it this far and you might have thought at the beginning of this, like, oh, I should probably just turn this off because it's geared towards men today, but it's not. No. Like, this is about the focus of the relationship and how, for us and in the context of this conversation, a high performing person at their job, at their work, at their business can then translate that to their skills and their relationship at home, and you owe it to your partner to do that. So can you say that quote one more time? What was it? Understanding your hardwiring, but it doesn't excuse you.
Oh, I'm gonna butcher. Yeah. I said your wiring may explain you, but it does not excuse you.
That's powerful.
Yeah, because we make that excuse. Well, I'm just a guy. Boys will be boys. It's just, it's just how I am. It's how I am. I can't change. No, you can't. right?
Yeah.
We expect our wives to change all the time. We daydream about what life would look like if our wives were different all the time. Or perhaps if you're listening and you're a wife and you might agree that you share the same sentiment. I wish my husband would be different. I wish my husband would change. Well, the goal isn't to make them change, right? The goal is to grow together and have that conversation. How can we partner in this journey together? And here's the thing, John, like this applies to your children too. Like if you got a son, you want to make him come to life, respect him, make him feel competent. You know what I mean? Speak life, speak encouragement into him. If you got a daughter, man, make her feel seen, heard, and safe in every way. And a lot of guys will, say to me like, we'll get on calls and they want to join the community or whatever, and they'll say, they'll make excuses, or it's not the right time, or don't have the resources or whatever. Or maybe they just don't have the courage. They don't think it's possible. They don't have confidence that they can do these things. To which I would encourage them and say, hey man, if not for you, for your children, do it for your kids. Because here's the thing. We know that statistically our children will become who we are, right? In a lot of ways. And so if you have a daughter and you're listening, we know it's true that your daughter will grow up to crave the attention and affection of the man that you are, right? From another man. She will grow up to find herself in a marriage just like the one that you have. And so if you want to bring home a great daughter, or you want your daughter to bring home a great man one day, you need to model that greatness for her so she can recognize it in other prospects as she gets older and she can see it for herself. If you want, your son to be great one day, again, you have to model the way, because our marriages, our relationships are our children's first classroom on relationships, right? Yeah. We are the blueprint. And so that's why I encourage listeners all the time. If you don't have the confidence or the courage or the capacity to do it for yourself, do it for your children, because they will follow in your steps. My father was an alcoholic. I didn't tell my story, but dude, my childhood was a disaster and a ton of crime, trauma, abuse, whatever. But my father was an alcoholic. My older sister grew up to marry an alcoholic and got divorced and married another alcoholic because she pursued what was modeled for her. Right? Yeah. So this is very powerful stuff. And I don't want you to, if you're listening to this today, don't underestimate the significance of really what we're talking about today.
Yeah. Ed Milet talks about the fact that things are caught, not taught. I've heard him say that quote a bunch. And I think about that all of the time inside of my own household. And it's another thing that I say to myself besides be one place well is that things are caught, not taught, because, even though I try to use a lot of words, especially at bedtime for the kids, because that's when it seems that they are just most receptive to a conversation and their brains are kind of open to it. Like they're sitting there trying to fall asleep, right? And so their mind is wandering, and it's even hard for me as a parent. I think every parent can attest to this. It's like you're so tired and you're ready to like put them to bed and like go to bed yourself or go watch a TV show or whatever. But man, those moments right there, I really try to like dial it in those moments with them, because it's special and you get to have great conversation. But that's 20 minutes during the day. I mean, now like I pick up my kids from school sometimes during the week and it's like, how was your day? Or, I ask these like leading questions, like what was the best thing that happened at recess today or what? And it's still hard to pull conversation out with them sometimes. It's always that before bed thing for me, at least with my kids, that works really well. But throughout the rest of the days and the weeks and the months, it's just a lot of it's what they observe. Like my daughter asked me the other day, like we were all sitting around in the kitchen and like I was hugging, giving a hug to my wife, and she's like, Dad, you guys really love each other, don't you? And I thought, oh man, like that. She has no idea how powerful that statement / question was that she said that, because I knew by her asking that question that it's based on what she's observing. And it means a lot to me that she grows up in a healthy household. And it means a lot to me that my kids, see us have conflict too, and like be able to like have conflict resolution and like talk through stuff. And we're not screaming and yelling, but like, I want them to see mom and dad having a healthy level of conflict and discussion and debate around things. So, man, you're hitting on all the right points. I mean, that's why I knew I was going to love this conversation today with you. And I think everybody listening the same. And at first I did think like, oh, this might be a conversation where, the men kind of tune in and but now I don't. Now that after we've had this discussion, I really hope that the wives and the moms and the females stayed for this, because this is important to hear. So you're doing great work, man. You should be proud of yourself and the mission that you're pursuing to help high achieving husbands and fathers.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. And it's funny, dude, like, my main influence is on Instagram. That's where I do a lot of work, and that's where you'll find me hanging out. But I'll tell you, it's funny, dude, 70% of my following are women, and I've never once made a post that addressed women. Never. It's always toward men. But they see it and it resonates with them, and they're like, like I'll do carousels and write things from the perspective of the wife maybe sometimes, or I'll call, say something about being present in the home, and it just resonates so powerfully with the wives or the women, and they'll send those posts to their husbands. And so, even though my podcast is called the Dad Nation Podcast, 40% of my listeners are women, because they're so locked in and they want to understand the heart of their husbands. They want to get through to their husbands. And they're so active in that because they're emotionally aware. They're intuitive. They're intelligent. They understand. I want to change things because they're aware of where they're at. And so many times men just don't have that same level of emotional intelligence. That's not a bad thing. Again, it's our wiring, and we're wired this way for a reason. But I say all that to say, I hope women tune in too, because they actually get a lot out of this conversation, because it helps them understand their husbands or their sons on a deeper level, right?
Yeah, I think that understanding goes so far, and I totally agree. Now that you say that, I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And this is why they call you the executive whisperer. I've been saving that. I've been saving that one till the very end. But you're the man. This is awesome conversation, Mitchell. I really appreciate you joining us. I hope everyone can appreciate the fact that at various points in our lives and our relationships, we probably all have these struggles, and sometimes just talking through it with somebody like Mitchell, or just being mindful and intentional, I think that can really go far with men. And shout out to the wives listening to this, and getting that perspective, as Mitchell, you shared, of what we're going through. But as we're wrapping today's conversation, now I know you've got some pretty cool things on your website as far as courses and programs, as well as the podcast, of course. But what's the best way for listeners to follow you and learn more?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that, John. I really appreciate it. You can just go to the website if you want. If you just Google Dad Nation, my face will be plastered everywhere. But the podcast, the Dad Nation Podcast, if you're listening today and you really feel a pull, like you want to win at home, like you do at work, I have a group coaching container. It's a 12-month leadership container called the High Performance Husband. It's an accelerated program where men can join, and this is what we talk about in there. We talk about our home, our health, and their happiness. And so that's my whole shtick, man. I help high-performing men reclaim their home, their health, and their happiness. And so that's the big piece if you really wanted to kind of jump into a journey and turn your life upside down. But if you wanted just a real simple free gift, I'd love to give this to your listeners today. It's just called the connection code. Okay, so when we talk about, we talked a lot about the emotions, right? And your wife's need to feel connected with on an emotional level. Well, the connection code is a simple PDF, and it's 50 questions that are designed to spark the fire and have more fun, right? And so you're going to learn to have fun with your wife again. You're going to have more intimacy, all those different things. And so it's totally free, and it's questions that are strategically designed to help you connect with her on an emotional level. And we cover everything from like dreams, fun, silly questions, to like intimate questions, everything. And the only thing I say to guys is, you know what? Grab this 3 or 4 questions off this list, and when you go out on a date, just try some out, And John, I've had women email me like the day after, and they've been like, who was that man that took me out last night? I've never felt so connected with. So if you just go, I think it's the Dad Nation Code, or dadnationcode.com/code, you can get it. But I'll give you the link to the code on the connection code in the show notes, and they can just download it for free. And that's just like a quick taste test. It's just a gift for me to just say thank you for listening today. But yeah, those are a few different ways that I can serve you today.
I love it, man. Thanks for doing that. And of course, the Dad Nation Podcast. And then on Instagram, is it at Dad Nation Co?
At Dad Nation Co is where you'll find me. Yeah, and I post
Beautiful.
tons and tons of stuff, like practical tips, encouraging, inspirational stuff. If you're a man, husband, father, or honestly, if you're a wife, like I said, a lot of my following is women as well. So tons of value through social media as well.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. We'll definitely have that in the show notes as well. So folks listening to this can go take a look at that and then follow and learn more. Man, thanks for joining the show, Mitchell. This is awesome conversation and great start to the new year.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate it. And if you don't mind, I'd love to leave your listeners with a real quote, a quote that's been resonating with me. And it's this: time is the only currency that we spend without knowing the remaining balance. All right. We have no idea how much time we have left, and we give it away all the time to things that don't matter. And so, John, I don't know, man, if I have 60 minutes or 60 years left. And so it's so important for me to focus on the things that matter the most, because in my wake-up call, my story, we didn't get into this, but I realized when my wife was walking out, what's the point of all this success if I'm going to be standing around the Christmas tree alone this year? You know, and so for me, when I heard that and that quote, I thought, wow, I will live with that kind of tenacity, with that sort of passion of like, I don't know how much I have left, so I will give it to the things that matter the most. And for me, it's my wife, it's my children, you know, and the different things I have going on. So that's my encouragement to you as you're listening today. Thank you so much for having me on the show, John. This has been an honor and a privilege.
Yeah, it was a blast. And I've heard that quote, not specifically said that way, but I've heard people say things like time is a non-renewable resource, a very finance-driven way to put it, but it's just so true. And I really think, I hope that those listening to this today in our audience, feel called to go have that conversation with their spouse, to go check out Dad Nation podcast and just keep these conversations going. As I shared too, I just, some of it's the intentionality you applied to it. So, you mentioned, Mitchell, like some people feel like maybe intimidated or like they can't, they're not motivated or they can't have these conversations or do it. You don't have to do the full 50 question PDF. You could pull 3 of them out and have it at date night. Like you can start small and build that spark, and cultivate that relationship, which I think is huge. So thank you for joining the podcast, for the work that you do, Mitchell. Awesome conversation for our audience. And speaking of our audience, thank you all, the listeners, for hanging out with us today. If you prefer to watch this episode, head over to our YouTube channel. You can find it at theaboveboardpodcast.com. And don't forget to go check out the Dad Nation podcast and give Mitch a follow there as well. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next week.